A veterinarian is somebody that has to take care of animals. An animal is an animal, I take care of it. I'll see if I can help. Feel that you have to be able to help any animal. And I like that because it's the variation of animals that makes it so nice.
The Incredible Doctor. Paul really did end, and there is real tragedy in that ending, but no accident caused it. After 24 seasons, the most watched veterinary show on television simply stopped, and the man at its center, Jan Paul, is alive and still seeing patients in rural Michigan. What ended the show was not a crash or a disaster on set. The truth is quieter and stranger than the rumor. So what actually ended the Incredible Dr. Paul? The vet from nowhere. To understand what ended it, you have to know how unlikely its beginning was. John Harm Paul was born on September 4th, 1942, the youngest of 6 children on a dairy farm in the Netherlands, in a world where television was barely an idea and veterinary medicine was something you did with your hands. He trained at Utrecht University, earned his veterinary degree in 1970, and that same year crossed the ocean to the United States with his wife Diane, whom he had met as an exchange student. He spoke English with a thick accent that never left him and never held him back. He did not land in a city. He landed in rural Michigan, and in 1981 he opened his own practice, Paul Veterinary Services, in the small town of Wiedemann, working out of a garage at first and building it slowly into a lifeline for the farmers and pet owners of the region. For 30 years he was simply a country vet, treating cows and dogs and horses, unknown outside his county. His practice served more than 25,000 clients over the years, and he treated everything from prize bulls to house cats with the same matter-of-fact competence. He charged less than most, and he never turned away an animal that needed him. He was the kind of man who measured success in animals saved, not in fame. The fame came from his son. Charles Paul, who had grown up riding along on farm calls, believed his father's daily work would make a television show, and he pitched the idea to National Geographic. The network agreed, and in 2011, The Incredible Dr. Paul premiered on Nat Geo Wild. Almost no one expected much. Instead, the show ran for 24 seasons, more than 200 episodes, and became one of the longest-running reality series the network ever aired. Reruns alone sometimes outdrew the network's new programming, and the show developed a following that spanned continents. What connected with viewers was the contrast. Here was an aging Dutchman in overalls, sprinting across muddy fields to wrestle a calf, cracking jokes, refusing to glamorize the work. He was old school, blunt, and unmistakably real. In an era when most reality television felt manufactured, millions of people who had never set foot on a farm tuned in every week to watch him work. They liked that he did not pretend the job was clean or easy. He delivered calves at 3 in the morning, stitched up dogs on his kitchen table when the clinic was closed, and treated animals that other vets would have turned away. That kind of dedication, unglamorous and unrelenting, was exactly what the cameras captured. And then, after more than a decade, it was over. The final episode aired, and the show that had outlasted almost everything else on its network simply stopped. But the story of how it stopped has been told dishonestly more often than not, because the truth involves a campaign, a courtroom, and a corporation, and none of them are an accident. So what really happened to the Incredible Dr. Paul? The decade-long effort to cancel him. What happened for most of the show's run was that a quiet war was being fought over it by other veterinarians. Long before any cancellation, a portion of the veterinary profession objected to what they saw on screen. To them, Dr. Paul's old-school methods were not charming. They were a display of outdated, sometimes dangerous medicine broadcast to millions of people as if they were perfectly fine. And some of them believed the show was actively teaching a generation of pet owners to expect less. In 2014, a veterinarian named Dr. Eden Myers watched an episode and decided to act. She filed a formal complaint with the Michigan board that licenses veterinarians, arguing that the care shown on television fell below the profession's standards. The case at the center of it involved a Boston Terrier named Mr. Pigglesworth, who had been hit by a car and needed an eye removed. The complaint alleged that during the surgery there was no sterile field, no intravenous therapy, and no proper anesthesia monitoring. The footage, captured for a national audience, showed what many in the profession considered a textbook example of substandard surgical care. The state board agreed more than once. In 2012, Dr. Paul had been fined and placed on probation over a different case. In 2015, after the Mr. Pigglesworth complaint, the board found him negligent again, fining him $500, placing him on a year of probation, and ordering him to take continuing education courses. An online petition, signed by thousands, called outright for the show to be canceled. The fight even spawned a counter-petition, with more than 11,000 supporters demanding the charges be dismissed. There were two fair sides to this, and both deserved to be heard. The critics were not wrong that modern veterinary standards emphasize sterile technique, pain management, and monitoring in ways the show often did not display. But Dr. Paul's defenders, including his own clients, pointed out that his methods kept care affordable for farmers who could not pay city prices, and that the animals on screen overwhelmingly went home healthy. The debate, in other words, was about what a standard of care actually means when the patient's owner cannot afford the gold standard. So where is the line between affordable old-school care and a standard the profession has simply moved past? That question hung over the show for years, and the campaign to cancel Dr. Paul became one of the longest-running fights in the veterinary world. But how did the campaign to cancel Dr. Paul actually end? The curious case of Mr. Pigglesworth. It ended in a courtroom, and it ended with Dr. Paul winning. After the 2015 ruling against him, he appealed, and in 2016 the Michigan Court of Appeals overturned the discipline by a unanimous 3-0 vote. The court's opinion even had a wry title for it. They called it The Curious Case of Mr. Pigglesworth. It was a rare moment of judicial humor in a case that had dragged on for years and cost the doctor, the state, and the profession a great deal of time and money. The whole saga had begun with a single viewer complaint and grown into a 5-year legal battle. The court's reasoning came down to a single awkward fact. Michigan, at the time, had no specific law on the books requiring veterinarians to operate in a sterile environment, wear gowns and gloves, or use particular kinds of anesthesia. The state board had disciplined Dr. Paul for violating standards that were never actually written into law. Without a clear legal standard, the court found, there was no clear violation. The board had applied professional ideals as if they were legal requirements, and the court refused to let that stand. It was a defeat that echoed through the veterinary licensing world. The judges put it bluntly. A dog's life had been saved, they noted, and yet the veterinarian who saved it faced sanctions. The evidence, they wrote, did not establish a clear standard of care that he had violated. As for Mr. Pigglesworth himself, the dog at the center of the whole fight, he had recovered fully, and his owners had been satisfied with the care from the start. They had even written letters supporting Dr. Paul, arguing that without his affordable treatment, they might have had to put their dog down. The state, the court was saying, should not have intervened. So the campaign that had been built around that one surgery collapsed. The petition to cancel the show did not work. The disciplinary rulings were thrown out, and the incredible Dr. Paul kept right on airing for another 8 years, long after the people who had tried to end it had given up. The show outlasted its critics by almost a decade. In those extra 8 years, he became one of the most recognized veterinarians on the planet, and his clinic in Weidman turned into a destination for fans who drove hundreds of miles just to shake his hand. Every petition, every hearing, every complaint had failed to achieve what a single corporate memo would eventually achieve in a single afternoon. If the show's enemies could not kill it, and the courts could not kill it, then whatever finally ended the incredible Dr. Paul had to come from somewhere else entirely. And it did, just not from any direction the fans were watching. So what actually pulled the plug on the show? The spreadsheet, not the accident. A corporation did, and the corporation was Disney. Around 2019, the Walt Disney Company acquired National Geographic, and with it, the Nat Geo Wild Network that had been Dr. Paul's home since the beginning. In the years that followed, Disney made a sweeping decision about its new property. It canceled the veterinary shows, all of them, not just Dr. Paul, Dr. Oakley, Dr. Jeff, Rocky Mountain Vet. The entire genre of veterinary reality programming that Nat Geo Wild had built its brand on, all of it was swept away. The decision was not personal. It was the kind of cold calculus that corporations make every day, weighing the cost of production against the value of the audience, and finding the numbers wanting. For Disney, the vet shows were legacy content from an acquisition, and the streaming era rewarded new titles over old ones. The incredible Dr. Paul aired its final new episode on July 6, 2024, closing out its 24th season. The reasons were the unromantic ones that end most long-running television. Viewership had been declining. Production was expensive. The network was shifting its programming strategy toward wildlife documentaries and streaming content, away from the character-driven reality shows that had filled its schedule for years. The finale, which aired as a retrospective, was more a fond farewell than a dramatic ending. There was no cliffhanger, no controversy, just a quiet sign-off after 13 years on the air. By all accounts, the decision came from the network, not from Dr. Paul. He had said in interviews that he and his family were surprised by it, and that they would have happily kept going. Fans were livid. Petitions circulated demanding the show be revived, and for a while, reruns drew larger audiences than some of the network's new programming, which only deepened the frustration. Some fans suspected the network of misjudging its own audience, of killing a show that still had millions of loyal viewers for the sake of a programming strategy no one had asked for. It felt, to the people who had loved the show for years, like a betrayal. There is a strange lesson buried in that. A show that had run for over a decade, that had millions of devoted viewers, that had survived every scandal its critics could throw at it, was ended not by any of those things, but by a cost-benefit analysis on a spreadsheet. So, what does it say about the television business when a show this durable can be canceled for reasons that have nothing to do with its quality? So, the accident that supposedly ended the incredible Dr. Paul never existed. The show was canceled, plain and corporate, by a network reorganizing its priorities. But that does not mean the story is without a real tragedy. There is one, and it is genuine, and almost every video about the show's ending has either ignored it or attached it to the wrong cause. So what is the real tragedy hidden in all of this? The real tragedy no one mentions. The real tragedy is a person, and her name deserves to be said correctly. Dr. Michelle Sharkey was a young veterinarian who had appeared on The Incredible Dr. Paul early in its run.
Talk about Dr. Michelle Sharkey, one of the former veterinarians on the popular Nat Geo Wild show, The Incredible Dr. Paul.
One of the newer staff vets who came through the clinic. She had left the show years earlier, in 2019, to continue her career elsewhere. And by 2024, she was practicing at a clinic in Colorado, living the life she had worked toward. She had graduated from veterinary school in 2017 and was pursuing her dream of practicing near the Rocky Mountains, a goal she had talked about for years. She had built a reputation for genuine kindness with both the animals she treated and their owners. In July 2024, the same month the show aired its finale, Michelle Sharkey died. She was 34 years old. According to friends who spoke about it afterward, the cause was heat stroke, described by one of them as a total freak accident. There is no need to dramatize it beyond that. A young veterinarian, at the start of her career, was gone. Her funeral drew the people who had known her, in Michigan and in Colorado, and the large online community of fans who remembered her from the show. Dr. Paul's official page posted a tribute after her death. It called her an outstanding veterinarian who had touched the lives of many, and it offered the family its condolences. The grief was real, and it was felt by the people who had worked alongside her and the viewers who had watched her grow into the profession on television. She was, by every account from colleagues and friends, well-liked and deeply committed to her work. Here is the part the dishonest videos get wrong. Michelle Sharkey's death was a genuine tragedy, but it did not end the show. She had not been a regular on The Incredible Dr. Paul for 5 years when she died, and the show had already aired its finale before her death was made public. The two events happened in the same month, and the clickbait fused them together, turning a young woman's real loss into a fake explanation for a cancellation that had already happened. The two events were connected only by the calendar, not by cause. That is the cruelty of the rumor mill around this story. It took a corporate cancellation and a separate personal tragedy and mashed them into a single fictional accident. And in doing so, it buried the actual person at the center of the real loss. The truth is less dramatic and more respectful than that. A young woman died, and a television show was canceled, and the two had nothing to do with each other. So where does all of this leave the man whose name is on the show? Still in the barn. It leaves him exactly where he has been for more than 40 years, which is at work. Dr. Jan Paul is alive. He is 83 years old, and despite the end of the television show, he has not retired. He continues to see patients at Paul Veterinary Services, the same clinic he opened out of a garage in Weidman, Michigan, back in 1981, and the doors are still open to the community that has relied on him for 2 generations. He still makes farm calls across the county, still performs surgeries, still puts in the kind of hours that would exhaust someone half his age. In interviews, he sounds exactly as he always has, full of opinions, sharp edges, and unafraid to share any of them. He has also found new ways to keep doing the work he loves. He and his family launched Dr. Paul Care, an on-demand veterinary telehealth service, and they began producing their own content under the banner Dr. Paul Presents on YouTube, taking the audience that the network discarded and rebuilding it on their own terms. The old episodes still stream on Disney Plus and Hulu, finding new viewers long after the cameras stopped rolling. The Pauls had taken the cancellation not as an ending, but as a pivot. They owned the brand, they owned the audience, and they decided to keep both. 24 seasons, more than 200 episodes, and a run that lasted 13 years on the air. By any measure, it is one of the most successful veterinary programs in television history, and it built an audience that the network, in the end, decided it no longer wanted. The show is over. The man and the work are not, and neither, by all appearances, is his stubbornness. This is the honest shape of the ending, stripped of the rumor. The Incredible Dr. Paul was not destroyed by an accident. It survived every attempt to cancel it, outlasted its critics by a decade, and was finally switched off by a corporate decision. Its star is alive, sharp, and still treating animals at 83. So when you measure a television legacy like this, what matters more? The way it ended, or the years it spent on the air? The answer is probably that the ending was never really the point. The point was the work, the animals, and the stubborn Dutch vet who refused to stop doing it, on camera and off, for more than half a century. The show ended the way most things in television end, quietly, and for reasons that had nothing to do with love. But the work that the show documented goes on. The Incredible Dr. Paul wasn't ended by a tragic accident. It was canceled by a network after surviving a decade-long campaign by fellow vets to take it off the air. The one real tragedy, the death of a 34-year-old vet, was unrelated and buried under false headlines. And Dr. Paul, at 83, is alive and still treating animals. What would you remember, the ending or the work? Comment down below.